Hello, I'm Tim. I am the Tinkering Turtle, and today I'd like to talk to you about adjusting the front fork. There are two adjustments, and we're going to go over each one of them individually, and then maybe if I get time I will go over the care and maintenance of the stanchion tubes and what these black things are. Let's get to it. Start on the right side of the bike, and when I say right side, I mean as you sit on the bike, your right side. Just like if you're in the car, you got a left and right. If you're sitting on the bike, you also have a left and right. On the right side, there's a lockout, and what the lockout does is just stops the shock absorber from compressing while you're riding, and they do that for a particular reason. If you're pedaling on, say, flat pavement, and you don't want the bike to bounce up and down as you're pedaling around, because that loses energy. The energy you put into the pedal you want driven all the way to the back tire. Anytime you compress the fork, it's using some of that energy. So they have the lockout, so if you're on flat, paved surface or something, you can just click that. It is a toggle. It is either on or off. And now when you try to compress the tubes, they won't compress at all because it's locked out. Let me show you. Nothing. Now if you have the lockout, the tab in the front position, then when you go to compress, you'll get compression on your stanchion tubes. So again, when the tab is moved forward, then your front fork will compress, and when you turn it so the tab is back and the lock is forward, then your forks are locked out and they will not compress when you hit a bump. Now on the left hand side of the bike, you have an adjustment to pre-tension your fork. Now this adjustment has 5.5 full 360 degree rotations. Now what that tension does for you is when you start turning this clockwise as you sit on the bike, it'll actually get harder and harder to compress the fork because you're pre-tensioning that spring. If you go all the way counterclockwise, then that's going to give you the most travel that your fork allows, and it's going to be the softest ride. Now, where should you set that? That's a great question. Most of the time, I'm going to tell you, tension it to either the terrain you're riding or whatever you like best. The majority of the time, my wife and I, we just ride on paved bike paths, so we keep this maybe 3 full rotations, and that's just to give us a little bit of cushion for imperfections in the bike path where roots have gone under the asphalt and made a bump or something like that. We don't do any off-roading pretty much, so to us that's a perfect balance of compression versus resistance, and it works well. To adjust this, it can be a little bit difficult. You have to, get a good hold on it. The first couple rotations, if you're all the way at the bottom like this one is now, are pretty simple. So I can go the first 360 degrees without too much issue. And then the next 360 degrees is tougher, and then so on. So if I crank this all the way up, the 5.5 turns, and those are full turns, 360 degrees. Then what happens is when you compress, you get a little bit of compression, but I had to put a lot of my weight in there to make that happen. Now if I'm going to back this all the way back off, so now it's at its least tension point, so when you compress it, it's good to go down a little bit easier. You see how it bounces very simply that way. And that's really all the adjustments on the front forks. So if you have any questions about that, let me know in the comments below. And let's get to looking at cleaning the stanchion tubes. going to notice on my stanchion tubes I've got this black neoprene cloth. And what those are is they're called lizard skins. And all they're intended to do is keep the dirt and debris from getting on your stanchion tube and getting down into your seal. So if you have these, and if you don't have them, I've got a link in the description. So if you have these, you're going to want to take these off to begin with. And they just come off. When you first get them, they're extremely long, so when you put them on the bottom of the stanchion tube here, they're going to stick way up above. Simply cut them off just above the black so you get a nice seal on it. Now, even though I've had these, you can see I've got a lot of dirt down in around here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to clean all that out. We're going to get the dirt off the stanchion tubes so that seal stays nice and clean for the whole time. So the first step in the process is I take my pretension on the left side of my fork and I turn that all the way counterclockwise so that I can compress the stanchion tube with little or no effort. So you just do that by turning it counterclockwise all the way. So next you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need a clean dry cloth, or in my case I used a shop towel, and I've got this product here called forkboost lube, which basically is a lubricant for the stanchion tube and the seal at the top. Your first step is to get as much dirt and grime off the stanchion tube, and I just basically wrapped it around, and I want to clean off as much of this dirt and debris that's on there as I possibly can before I go any further. Try not to drive dirt down into the gasket. All you're trying to do at this stage is get in there and get the dirt off, because we don't want to drive it down in. As you can see, I have a little bit of dirt. It's not too bad because I did have the lizard skins for the whole time. So my next step with this lube is when I first got it, I took the cap off, I took the paper off, put it back on, and it's just got an adjustable twist top. So it's open at this point, and I want to run lube all the way around the post. And I want it to run down onto that seal. You don't need a whole bunch to do it, but you do need to get it on there nice. And the next step I'm going to do, and this is a good one, is I'm going to stand up and I'm going to push down on the fork, driving that lube down into the seal and pulling the dirt back out as it returns. And that's why we turn the spring down to the lowest point. Now, as you can see, where I pulled it down, there's a little black ring there, and that's all the dirt that's come back up out of the seal. I'm going to take another clean cloth, and I'm going to wipe that off all the way around. And now my seal is nice and clean. I don't see any dirt and debris all the way around it. I'm going to clean the oil off my forks. And you see I got a little bit more dirt out of that, and it's nice and clean. I've cleaned off all the hard spots. Now I'm going to turn this one inside out. I'm going to add a little lube to a spot, and I'm just going to rub down the stanchion all the way around to just lube that stanchion up just a little bit. I'm not trying to wipe it off, I'm just trying to get it wrapped around and nice and lubed. When we put the lube down in and drove it into the gasket, that lubed up the gasket inside, so that's good. It's all clean, and now I'm just going to put my lizard skin back on. I start with the bottom. And note the Velcro's on the back side of the stanchion. And then I'm going to slide this up through this part. And again, hooking up the Velcro. And now I've got a cover for the dust and debris. The inside's all clean, the dirt's removed, the grime's removed, and it's lubricated. Now you do the same thing on the left side of the bike. I will probably not do that on camera because it's exactly the same process, but I will do it before I put the bike back up. How often should you do this? Well, they say your bike chain and cassette you should clean every 25 hours or so. I figured this is about the same. So maybe once a month, because my wife and I ride quite a bit. And that's for us who ride on, fairly clean paved bike paths. If you're out in the gravel and sand and mud, then you're going to want to do it maybe even as much as every time you ride it, because you don't want the grime building up in here and going down into the seal, because it'll actually scratch the stanchion tubes and reduce the life of your front fork. So hopefully that's been helpful. That's how you clean and adjust your front fork. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And the product links for the lubricant and the lizard skins will be in the description of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.